Hi everyone, welcome to our first class. This is my first video, so please bear with me because I am not a professional video maker. I wanted to start off with our course calendar because this is the beginning of the week. For the first week, we are writing an analysis essay. You are going to choose one of the speeches that I give you, and you're going to write an essay describing its effectiveness. For a speech to be effective, that means that it's persuasive. So we're going to focus on persuasive appeals or rhetorical appeals. For today, the content we're covering are rhetorical appeals and a student example of the kind of essay that you're going to write. When we're done with that, you're going to read chapter 8, which is all about rhetorical analysis, and you're going to write a one-page explanation. So let's get started with our rhetorical appeals, and let me share a new screen with you. Rhetorical appeals, as I said, are just ways that we appeal to the audience in which we are persuasive or convincing. So you may have heard of a rhetorical question. If I said, "Are you really going to leave the house right now without doing the dishes?" I'm not actually asking you to answer yes or no. I'm asking you to do the dishes. So I'm indirectly asking, I'm persuading you to do something. Aristotle said there are 3 pillars of rhetoric or rhetorical persuasion. One is logos, and we can appeal to people by using logic. People like to believe that this is the most powerful appeal, that we are reasonable, logical creatures, and we let our minds do all of our deciding for us. Logic has to do with facts. A statistic is just a fact that uses numbers. One of the most important numbers that persuades us is how much something costs or doesn't cost, how much it will save us. Things like definitions, though, also have to do with reasoning. How exactly do we define marriage, or how exactly do we define crime? Comparing two things and looking at how they're similar or different is definitely a form of reasoning. Things like cause and effect are logical reasoning examples. There are a lot more, but these are some basic ones, and these are the ones that we're going to talk about today. There will be another video on pathos, which uses emotion and is actually the most powerful way to persuade people. We like to think that we're logical, but we're more often ruled by our hearts than by our heads. Pathos can have to do with hope for something positive, or positive emotions that may come if you buy a product or complete an action, but they might also have to do with fear of something negative happening if you don't buy a product. The final appeal is ethos, which has to do with authority. It is much more likely that we will be persuaded by somebody that we trust or somebody that we like, instead of somebody that we don't know or that we don't like. So we're just using their authority as the persuasion there. So let's first talk about logos. I have a few examples here. Again, logos is convincing someone using logic, and we have this visual, and I'm going to ask you, what do you think the thesis is? What is the author for or against, and what do they want the audience to do? And then I'm also going to ask you, where do you see logos? What is the evidence or reasoning that they use? Where is the logos here? So the ad says 1 in 5 women will be a victim of sexual assault during her college years. And we have a visual of 5 women, and one of them has all of these definitions inside: sister, daughter, friend, classmate, you. At the bottom it says stand up, speak up, stop violence at this university. So I want you to think about, what does the author want the audience to do? What do you think the thesis is here? It's pretty clear that they want us to stand up and speak up to stop sexual assault. If you know someone or hear about somebody, make sure you speak up, make sure you stand up to people who could be predators or sexually violent people. But what is the logos? That's what we're trying to learn about. What is the evidence or reasoning that they use? We've got right here 1 in 5 women, very clearly a statistic of how common it is and why we need to stop it. We also have some definitions here, what type of people this could happen to. And the point of all of these definitions is that it could happen to anyone. That's reinforcing how common it is. So we can see how logos works here, and we can see how it works here. to be persuasive. Okay, we have another example here. On this side, we show what would happen if a child was hit by a vehicle going 40 miles per hour. 40 miles per hour is faster than the speed limit usually allows. And it says there is a 70% chance the child will die. That's a pretty high percentage. On this side, it says what would happen if a child was hit by a vehicle going 30 miles per hour. There's an 80% chance that they will live. We see this speed limit sign. This is a pretty common thing that you would see on every road that says the fastest that you could drive is 30 miles per hour. We also have the visual here, these two sides being compared. So what does the author want the audience to do? I think it's pretty clear that they want the audience to drive slower. That's the thesis. That's what they're trying to persuade us to do. And what kind of evidence or reasoning do they use? Well, we have 40 miles per hour versus 30 miles per hour. We have 70% chance of dying and 80% chance of living. Here are some statistics and some numbers, but we also have a comparison of what happens in one case and how it's different than what happens in another case. So we can very clearly see compare and contrast. Visually, we see the skeleton and the living boy, and we can compare and contrast that way. All right, the third example is a little bit more of the same. This young lady is saying, I never thought I would be a statistic. Pretty clear what kind of logos we're going to encounter here. She says more than 750,000 teenage girls will become pregnant this year. I think the author wants the audience to somehow stop teenage pregnancy. I'm not sure exactly how they want us to do that, if they want us to do that through abstinence or not having sex, if they want people to be protected, if they want people to be educated. There are a lot of different ways they could go about this, but it seems pretty clear that the thing that they're against is teenage pregnancy, or accidentally becoming pregnant as a teenager because she never thought it would happen. The kind of evidence or reasoning, this number right here, 750,000 is the statistic. Okay, one more. Oh, I think two more. We've got a gun here being loaded with cigarettes. We've got a list of effects that might happen if you are a smoker: stroke, addiction, blood pressure, cancer. And the bottom says smoking kills, so why bother starting? Think about it for a second. What does the author want the audience to do? I think it's very clear they don't want us to smoke, but specifically in this case, they don't want people to even start smoking. The kind of evidence that they use. On one side, we've got a cause and effect situation. We've got a list of many effects, but we also have something else going on here. These cigarettes are being put into the gun, so they're kind of being compared to something. And this kind of comparison is called an analogy. In this case, the cigarettes are being compared to bullets because they can both kill you. So we have an analogy that's pretty effective and a list of effects that are pretty effective. Finally, another statistic, 9 out of 10 people who share injection needles test positive. So injection needles would be needles that are used for illegal drugs. 9 out of 10 people test positive for HIV or AIDS. You have the visual of what 9 out of 10 people look like, and the caption at the bottom says, be the one who doesn't. Very clearly, this is the call to action. What do they want us to do? And the evidence or reasoning is this statistic up at the top. Okay, so we've talked about facts and statistics. We've talked about compare and contrast. We haven't talked about cost, but I'm sure you will see plenty of examples of that. The last thing that I'd like you to do is take a look at this video. This video has a lot of logos in it. I would first like for you to find examples of logos in this video. And then I want you to think about if those examples are persuasive or not. Is this actually a persuasive method that works or doesn't work? I will leave the link up on Blackboard, and we will talk about this during our class. I'm going to end the video now, and you can move on to pathos.